used to work at like TGI Fridays, and you had to do things like that. Right?
Wait, why?
Because it was so impressive to show you doing like a pyramid of cups, and then when you spilled them, it was really spectacular.
All right, ladies. Well, this panel is called BFF something. I think stands for like bodacious, fierce females. Isn't that right? Okay.
I thought it was waitressing training.
So to kick us off, I actually would really love to talk a little bit about your own childhood best friend. So let's chat about, who was this person? How did you guys meet? Did you have any like secret friendship rituals, creepy or otherwise?
Okay, I'll start. My best friend's name was Jessica Ricks. We had the same birthday. She lived across the street. We were Jenny and Jessica. J. And I remember very vividly walking around the loop at school with her and being like, we're just like the same. We both like pizza. And we both like the same birthday and we had the same this. We've been best friends for a while, and then she was like, actually, I don't want to be.
What?
She's like, I still want to be your best friend, but I don't want to be like the same.
Wait,
And then,
what does that mean?
we're just too alike. And I think she felt like maybe overburdened by that. So
She wanted to stop dressing
she wanted a
the
little
same every
distance.
day. It's like those identical twins in the same outfit.
Yeah, So
So are you still friends with her?
no, we're not still friends, but I still think of her fondly.
Or did you look her up on Facebook?
No, she moved away a couple years later.
I really want her to be in the audience right now.
Jessica?
Do you have something you'd like to say to Jenny?
My childhood best friend was this boy that lived next door to me named Joe Kimmel. And he and I used to put on little plays together, and we wrote little stories together, and he was just the cutest thing, and I loved him so much. And I have lived in the same town my entire life, and so I still go to the same dentist that I went to when I was a kid, although somebody else is taking over the practice. But they still, every time I sit down, they give you that thing like, fill out and just make sure that nothing's changed on your record. The other time, last time I was there, I flipped it over, and it had like what I had written when I was like 7 years old on the other side. And it's like, child's name, and parents, and then it was like favorite person, and I had written Joe Kimmel.
Where's Joe?
So Joe is in Missouri, and he works in like public policy, and we recently like reconnected. My parents are still friends with his parents because they live next door. But he moved, I'm going to tell you way too much about Joe Kimmel. He moved to Missouri when he was like 12 and I was 10 or 11, and he wrote me these letters, like these insane, like long, I'm sure I wrote him too, but I kept all of his letters in a box, and he drew pictures on them, and he did comics, and it was just the coolest thing. So recently I sent them all to him, and he was so touched. He's like, it's like a part of my life that I would never have had back, but we, he moved away too. This is like a theme. I'm curious now.
Do you keep your letters in a zip box?
I kept them in a box though, and I was like, I'm going to send these to you. And it was actually really cool. So.
I don't know how to answer this question because I had this girl who lived up the street, and I'm not going to give her last name. Her name was Michelle, and we were like.
What's her last name though?
Yeah, for reasons. Because we were like best friends by convenience because she was like the kid who lived up the street, and so we played together all the time. We kind of hated each other, but like we so wanted a best friend, so we got like T-shirts that said Michelle and Gayle are best friends, and Gayle and Michelle are best friends, and we got the beef fry and the stunt ends, but we didn't actually like each other. There was no one else in the neighborhood to play with, so
Like
we were
friend by proxy.
yeah, so we were just like,
That's what it is.
yeah, she was like a friend booty call for like years. So I don't think I made a really close friend until I was in junior high, and then it was like the beginning, we saw each other from across the room, and I had a horseshoe on, and she's like, do you ride horses? I'm like, yes. Do you ride horses? Yes. And it was
Wait,
like,
you were a horse girl?
Totally. And it was love at first sight for like 3 months, and then she dumped me. Like, dumped me hardcore. I did not realize what was going on. I was like, why don't you want to be my friend anymore? Like, leave her notes in her locker. I did not understand. It was like my first time being dumped, and I had been dumped, by the way, by female friends way more than dudes.
Yeah. And it's worse.
Oh my
It's
God,
so much worse in some ways because I think there's something really you're almost more vulnerable with your girlfriends in some ways. And I have been through that as well. I've had a few pretty devastating friend breakups. And it's still hard. You know, like I'll hear a song on the radio that'll make me think of one of my friends that I'm not that close with anymore, who I was super, super, super close with. And it just makes me so sad. You know, it's like, I do. But I think it's I know. I'm so glad I have these friends. I'm never going to break up with you. You're stuck with me.
I don't really break up with people. I just get dumped.
What? Uh-oh.
There's a time, I think sometimes where
Keep
you
my
feel,
distance from you, Han.
like if it's not working, it's not working. You know? You gotta cut your losses.
And be honest,
I'm
though,
going to be behaving myself much more with Jenny these
Yeah, but
days.
like if we've been at this for like 4 or 5 years, I feel like we need to kind of
Sometimes for the history's sake, it doesn't always mean,
whatever.
you know?
cold heart. This panel's over now.
We are never, ever getting back together. You know? Never. See the Taylor Swift moment.
But I think when you first have that first friend breakup, it's devastating partially because you don't think that happens. Like you grow up hearing about, you know, boys and girls, you know, romantic breakups, but it's like, why would you break up with a friend or vice versa?
Well, I think part of it, you know, as you get older and I have some friendships that have gone like 25 years. And you
got them loose.
Yeah, well, no, but it's like the person that you were when you met, you're not that person anymore, so it's hard to grow at the same speed. It's almost like a marriage, I think.
Right.
You know, and then especially if it was by proximity, like you all went to the same church or you were at the same school and you have the same last name, and so you sat next to each other. And then as adults, I think it's hard to maintain that. And sometimes it's like you get together and you fight more than not, and it's like a lot of baggage.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's very rare to have a friendship that is going to survive like that. You know, like I think a lot of times they just kind of fade to black. But what happens, I think what you said, Sarah, is key, because I know like I had like probably 3 very key friendship dumpings in my life, and that was the first one. And the second one, when it happened, it was really devastating. It was a friend that I had been living with, and she started going out with a guy, and eventually kind of he moved in, and they decided they wanted to live together. And I went away for the weekend. Oh, wait a second. I went away for the weekend because we were sharing an apartment, and when I came back, they had with our landlord made a decision to swap our 2-bedroom for a 1-bedroom and move my stuff out to storage.
What? No.
Right?
You know, I hope that you were the dumper, not the dumping.
I was the dumpy.
No!
Literally kicked to the curb, but it was the most devastating thing because A, like my friend dumped me and was screwed away, but B, because like I was so ashamed of it, like I couldn't talk about it. If it had been a boyfriend that had done that, I would have been like with all my friends and everyone would be like, oh my god, he didn't do that, that's horrible. But because it was a friend, I had no language to talk about it as a breakup. What it was, I just felt like, what's wrong with me that I'm getting so upset? What's wrong with me that my friend did this? Like, that was what made it difficult. So by the time I got dumped by the third really good friend, like I had other friends that I could like send angry emails to, and they read them for me. Then yes, don't send these.
I think sometimes when friendships come to an end, it's because the friendship worked because you were one way and your friend was another. Like I've had friends where, you know, when I was younger and I was much more sort of underconfident, and I was friends with very confident, and they wanted to be sort of like the person that knew everything and dealt with everything. And when I became more confident, it just didn't work anymore. It's like they needed me to be like sort of pathetic for our friendship to work. And I didn't want to be pathetic anymore. So sometimes things just run their course. It's hard. I think friendship is really hard. I think I've written so much more about friendship than relationships in my books for that reason, because relationships are one thing, but friendships, it's kind of undiscovered territory in terms of writing.
Well, I think, you know, I've seen about all of our books. I mean, the friendship breakups really informed I Was Here, which when I thought about it was really about 2 friends who are like the most important relationships in the world, and what happens when they kind of drift, and then what happens when one of those friends really goes away. And all of our recent books, I think, are so deeply steeped in female friendship. I mean, Jenny, yours is the sisterhood, but it really does feel like those 3 sisters are such. That friendship is such a huge part.
And I think that I have a sister and we're really close. It's almost like with sisters, it's like a relationship that you don't really pick. And it's something that stays forever, hopefully, that you have your whole life. And so there's something, that thicker thin sort of thing that goes with that. And it's what makes it all the more like special. It's just like the prevailing relationship of your life, I think. But my new book, P.S. It's a Love is the sequel to All the Boys. There's a lot about a friendship breakup actually in the first book that wasn't really touched on.
With Genevieve.
Yeah, it's Genevieve. Yeah, it's Genevieve. Yes.
I'm very excited. I just started the new one because it just came out. And also, what a cliffhanger. Thank you, Jenny. Yes.
You're welcome.
Well, and I really like that you guys all, explore those facets of female friendship because, while all of us obviously love like romance and we love to swoon, like it's those friendships in our adolescence that like truly I think shape us way more than boyfriends or girlfriends. And I feel like, but I still feel like it's not a topic that's really prevalent in young adult literature. I mean, do you guys agree, or have I just not read all the books?
I think it's prevalent, but I think giving it I guess you don't always see its proper due. I think that for me, those friendships, that have spanned most of my life, the boys are long gone, and those girl friendships are the ones that I've kept into adulthood, and those are the people who you will probably know in another 30 or 40 years. So I think it needs to get its proper due. But I think it is prevalent. I think there's a lot of that theme comes up a lot in YA, I think.
And I think with my book, with Saying Anything, I was going through this thing with one of my very close girlfriends from high school, and we're just not as close as we used to be, and it's not for me not trying, it's just sort of, it is what it is, which is really, really hard. So I think I wrote this friendship with Layla in the book as sort of a way of building a friend for me, when I really needed one, and Layla was exactly the kind of friend that I wanted when I was writing this book and that I was missing from my friends. So.
And she's an awesome friend.
Yes, she's she's loyal from the get-go, and she's no agenda. There's, she's just, because you meet people like that. That's what friendship is really all about. You meet somebody and immediately you're like, yes, you get it. And I'm very lucky that I do have this group of girlfriends. I've lived in my hometown my whole life, and there were 6 of us. And most of us are still really close. And, we don't see each other that much. We live in the same town, and I still don't see them that much.
How much is not that much? Once a month?
Once every few months. I mean, because we're just busy. We all have kids, and it's crazy. But when I do see them, Gayle, one of my friends just happened to come to the bookstore when Gayle and I were doing an event for August here. She's going to get a gift certificate. This shows you how invested my friends are in my career. She's like, oh, you're in the bookstore. So, wow, I had no idea. So she just happened to be there, and I got to introduce her to Gayle, and it was this wonderful thing of my life, my home life, my adolescent, my teen, my BFF, and then here's Gayle, and Ashley ended up staying for the event, which I didn't expect her to, and she was like, it was so cool to see this other part of your life, she's like, on the one hand, I'm like, ooh, who is this woman that Sarah's so close with that I don't know, but at the same time, it was just worlds colliding. I was so excited. I was like, Gayle got to meet Ashley, so awesome. So those girls are my heart in many ways.
I think you're actually right, Sarah, because I was thinking about this a lot, and I was trying to think of what YA books are out there in which the friendship, the kind of rise and fall of the friendship, is center stage. And there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And especially given that in this particular time of your life, it's your platonic friendships that really are the dramatic friendships in your life. It's not usually the romantic relationships. Those usually come a little bit later. But I think, for whatever reason, reading being kind of aspirational or fantasy or what have you, that you don't necessarily see that reflected. Where, there's been, there's some really great books about friendship breakups. I read Amy King's Gloria Bryan, her most recent one, has such a nice depiction of how friendships really fall apart. And I'm looking forward to reading your sequel, Jenny, because it is something that I think women, men of every age, particularly girls, because of the way we have these very, very intimate friendships early on and how they fall apart spectacularly. It happens. And so once I started talking about all the sort of skeleton breakups I have in my closet, it turned out that Sarah, that a lot of people have them. And then of course there's the mercenaries out there like Jenny who are like, yeah, I'm doing the dumping. It's gotta be somebody, right? It's gotta be somebody.
Well, but here's the thing, and obviously I'm not a boy, but I feel like all the guys I know, my husband, I have a lot of great friends. I have a lot of friends that are boys, guys.
You're like a guy's girl.
No, I'm not.
I don't really like to.
But I wish I was.
That's
Those are always the cool girls.
Yeah, the cool.
You're the non-existent cool girl, right?
Right. But anyway, I feel like a lot of guys don't have that breakup of friendship. Like, they have friendships fade for sure.
Yeah.
But they don't have this, like, dramatic, like, blowout. And part of me wonders, is that because, and again, this is just my perspective, like, is it because girls, like, lean on those friendships more, and they can also, because they're so intimate, like you said, the opposite can be true, like, girls can really cut each other down because they've been so vulnerable. And I don't know if that happens as much with boys. I don't know.
I think with girls often, especially when you're in high school, it's like you become so obsessed with your friends. It's like you want to like live in their skin, and you know what I mean. Like you're like crazy about each other. It's like a love relationship.
It's like a romance. And
yeah.
I don't think guys, for a lot of reasons, one of them being it's just not culturally and socially acceptable. Like you don't generally see, you know, guy platonic friends walking down the hall to school holding hands. I'm told like increasingly on the coast that might be something that you see. But like I think if they're not in a romantic relationship, it's not something you see. Like that kind of like physical, easy intimacy that is just accepted for women, young women, is not accepted for young men, which I would say is a detriment.
Totally.
Right. And I think too that with guys, it's, you know, I know that with my husband, when things have, he's had friendships since he also, you know, knows people since high school, and it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, you know, like he's not into it anymore, neither am I, it's fine, whatever, you know. But he's not going to spend hours analyzing the situation like I am, and he's not going to like be like, but what about this time, and what, and like I have to work through it. It's like a lot of hours dedicated to just like get, and he's just like, enough. She doesn't want to be your friend anymore. He says he's got to cut his lawn. What do you think that really means? Exactly. What part of she doesn't want you to know where she lives do you not understand? My husband literally said that to me recently. One of my friends. Like, what part of that is not computing with you?
All of it?
All of it, because baby. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it is different with guys, but I think they still feel the hurt. I think anybody does, and I agree with Jenny. Like, there's something about these friendships that you forge in high school. For me, it's like, I can't say it's like wartime because obviously I haven't been in war, but it's a stressful time, and sometimes you feel disconnected from your parents because of all the changes that you're going through. And here's somebody else that is going through these same changes, and they get it. And so when you lose them, it's like you're losing a part of yourself, or you're losing, you know, a comfort that you had come to depend on. And I think that's why it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Jenny, mercenary over there. Thoughts?
I'm not really a mercenary,
I
Gayle.
I know, that's
that out
pretty
there.
badass. I would just take it.
I agree with what you guys are saying. I think I remember times where my best friend would be like homesick one day at school, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta like eat with. You know what I mean? It's that thing of having someone right next to you. And like my best friend and I had that quote, that Aristotle quote that was like, a friend is but a soul that lives in two bodies, and we like really believed it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where we're just like, we're soulmates, and you have that like,
Fries.in.
yeah. And your identity is like very wrapped up in that relationship too. It's like we're the, you know, we have like nicknames, you know, and you just go around and you feel like known by that person. I think that's another big part of it. It's feeling unknown by your parents maybe, and like other people, and feeling really known by like one person.
I want to age up the friendships now, because there's something about when you sort of take the friendship out of like the insecurity stew that is high school and put it into kind of the now. My female friendships now are like the most nourishing things, because like a lot of that sort of craziness is gone. But what remains is like this ability to have these people with whom, like, you know, I have been with my husband for half of my life, and all going well. Like I will not ever fall in love with like another guy, but occasionally like I get to fall in love with new people, and it's when new platonic friends enter my life. And it's just this wonderful thing, minus like the craziness for the most part of high school. And I think that's part of like the relationship that we have sometimes as office colleagues. We might not see each other all the time, but there is like a very strong underpinning of like mutual support.
Right. And I think the definition of a friend for me, and this is the way I feel of my high school girlfriends, is it doesn't matter how long how much time passes between when you see each other. It doesn't matter if you don't talk to each other or you're just busy, and when you see each other, you are right back there. Like that's the way I am with my high school girlfriends. I feel like that's the way I'm with you guys. Like we see each other and it's like, whoop, we're right back to where we were the last time. You know, you don't, there's not having to ease in and like, oh, we're gonna warm up a little bit. It's like, nope, you just pick up where you left off and then you leave off again. And that's when you know that you're like in a good place with a friend, I think, for me.
For me, part of why I feel so lucky to do what I do is like I got to meet my best friend because of it. Siobhan, you guys probably know Siobhan, and Siobhan Vivian is my best friend. We did a Paris trip together and a London trip, and it's like having that person who, it's like all the best of all worlds because, you know, she's like my closest person, but we also have like the business stuff in common.
You guys write together.
We write together, we write books together, we write side by side, and we just like love each other.
And they still love each other after writing books.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that in high school? Like,
Now, oh my God, my friend Adele Griffin, who's also a YA writer, always says, she's like, you and Siobhan really you test your friendship to the absolute limit.
Yes.
And we do. We will be together in a hotel room for 2 weeks, or go on the road together, or write books, and we still love each other.
it's like a reality show.
Cameras in there. Yeah, I think it's definitely true.
And do you guys feel like, you know, people always say the author world and the YA genre is pretty close-knit. Do you think that, like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, is it just the nature of that world, or is it, like, you guys supporting each other is a necessary part of being in the YA world? Gayle?
I think that for a long while, YA was kind of marginalized, and we were considered like the kids at the Thanksgiving table. But as everybody knows, it's much better to be at the kids' table because like you don't have to sit there and be boring and proper, and you have a really great time. And I think that explains a lot that has gone on with YA in terms of what you've seen in terms of the work, because that allowed, I think, some of the greatest experimentation to happen within YA. But it also meant that the people in YA, I'm going to steal from E. Lockhart, who talks about, like, if you're one of those people that wants to go to that literary party and be taken very seriously by those literary people, you do not write YA, because that just will not happen. So you just kind of get it's a self-selecting group for the most part that kind of comes, that's sort of not really into that. And because we are, or traditionally have been, off on our own, I think that has led to a real, genuine camaraderie, which isn't to say that people don't compete with one another, and there's not that, but there's a spirit of real support underpinning it all, which is just kind of remarkable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, you know, I'm coming up in 2016, it'll be 20 years since my first book.
High five.
Yeah!
I'm always a person that loves nostalgia, so I'm just on this total nostalgia train about all this. But when I first started out, yeah, I think YA was so different. You know, there wasn't a teen section. My first book when it came out was shelved next to Corduroy and Goodnight Moon, you know. I mean, it just changed and changed and changed. And with the change, there has been, you know, a lot of new voices coming in and a lot of things. But, you know, I think as far as the competitiveness, like, it is there because we're human. But my dad always says, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I believe that. And I think when I see other YA authors that are bringing more people to YA, it's only good. I feel like it's good for the rest of us because it's like, okay, well, I read this book and I really liked it, now what? You know? So I'm grateful. And and you want to see your friends do well. Like, I was so happy for Gayle with If I Stay. Like, that was so awesome.
Number one, baby.
I know, and the movie was so great.
Yeah!
How hard she did work because I had sat across from her more than once, like hearing her talk about all the stuff she was doing, and it's like, you want to be, why would you not be happy for someone? I don't know. Yeah.
I just want to point out that Sarah Dessen is probably one of the most generous people in the biz. Sarah has like 260,000 followers on Twitter, and you really do. You are so generous and kind to people up and coming. Really, she blurbed my first book, and has just been like throughout, like a very supportive person. And I think, to me, that's really that's a good example. I feel like I'm tearing up. It's a really good example for people coming up through the business to see somebody who's so successful, who is generous to people, and I think it sets a tone. It really do. People, and I think John Green's also generous. I think, you know, people who, one time I met George Clooney, and segue. Makes sense.
She works this in every single
Okay, so my best friend and I were hanging out. It was my neighborhood, so it was completely like a stalking situation. He was filming Burn After Reading, and we knew he was going to be filming, so we kind of were flirting up with the crew guys. So they let us stand, like, you know, in the like VIP area, and then they go, he's coming soon, just be ready. And so he comes out, and then he immediately was getting into his SUV, and he had like a boot on because he had broken his foot like in a motorcycle accident. Anyway, and then we go, Mr. Finney, would you mind taking a picture with us? And then he was like, sure. And then he like hops out of the SUV and puts his arms around us. It was so nice. And then the next day, I saw him again.
You just happened to be there.
I was in his house when he came
So
home.
again, brunch.
Police officers took a picture for us, closed the phone. It was horrible. But anyway, so I didn't get the pic. And the next day he saw me. He saw me and my friend. He goes, "Hey girls." And why I'm bringing the story up, it's not just to
brag. Yeah.
But it's to say that he's like an A+lister for a reason. It's because he's kind.
So Sarah, Dessen,
and Sarah's an
George
A+.
Clooney.
Well, and I think one reason, and that's very kind of you to say thank you, but I would not, well, I don't want to say that, but I believe one of the reasons that I am published is because I had a mentor in this writer named Lee Smith who...
And Sarah always gives her
Yep.
lots of kudos.
And
Sarah
she was like this superstar, and I worked for her. I went to high school with her son. I worked for her. She basically got me my agent, and you know, when I was started doing readings and nobody was coming because nobody knew, she like did readings with me so that all her people would come and like buy my books for their grandchildren and their children. And so it's like paying it forward. I would not be here without that. And so, and it's only, yeah, it's true.
This is like a warm fuzzy panel.
It's a love fest. What do you expect? It's like the three of us together. It's just the love.
Let's do a group hug with the whole audience.
But anyway, I think it serves everyone. That's how I feel. It really does.
Yeah. I kind of want to ask a hijinks question. Can you guys tell me of a time, just a fun, crazy, random, whatever moment that you shared with a fellow author friend?
No further than this one right here.
Well, geez, there's so many. There's so many. One time,
Besides when you met George Clooney.
at Rochester's Teen Book Festival, a bunch of us like crashed the prom. Yeah, and this is right on Jersey Shore time, so all the guys were wearing like vests with no shirts underneath. And like hot pink bows. And it was like just deals. Yeah, so we crashed in and we got kicked out for a few minutes. We're like, we're YA, we're cool. Like, creepers. So we just sort of like party with these people. And we got kicked out.
How long were you there before you got kicked out?
Like 15, 20 minutes.
Did you get like some dancing and
Yeah,
some
we were dancing a little bit.
Did you slow dance with any teenagers?
No.
That's creepy.
We were singing our little dance circle. We were
I
just like,
draw the line.
yeah.
Did you guys strike the punch? No?
Shut up.
It's awesome.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I crashed a prom too, but now that sounds really derivative.
What is the deal with you guys?
It's because of the Rochester Festival.
No, it was in Rochester.
Oh, okay.
This was in LA Times, and we crashed the prom. It was Adam Gibbets. I think he was the ringleader. And it was at the hotel that my high school, because I grew up in LA, had the prom at, and I didn't go to my prom, so it was like really awesome. So we got kicked out of that prom, but then we crashed another party, and there was a band playing Black Eyed Peas. I got a feeling we had the best time. That was pretty fun. And I write, there's a lot of YA authors who live in Brooklyn, so I frequently write with Libba Bray and E. Lockhart, and sometimes we like do lady swim afterwards and steaming and
Lady swim, where do you go?
why?
Jenny's going to be showing up there too.
But I mean, like, I feel like this has become, it's far too clean of a panel for me to discuss the kind of things that go on there, but it is like, if you know it is all you know. And it's like the crazy humor. And but also, it gets back to what we were talking about. It's like there's hijinks that happen and all sorts of just like dirty talking. Like Amy Schumer, you know, we were there first. Like, I love Amy Schumer. But then also we talk work, but also it gets down to like the, oh my God, I'm so crazy, let me put my crazy on the table, and then you have your friends being like, you're not crazy, like that's just human. And once you're crazy on the table, it just sort of looks like mashed potatoes. It's fun, right?
It's a beautiful statement.
I like that. Can we put that on a t-shirt? I need that. Hijinks. Well, anytime I'm with Jenny, I feel like things get a little nutty. We were just out in LA together having a great. We went to the Four Seasons
How many
bar.
cocktails were involved?
Many. But I would say my one hijink story. Now I'm going to seem person like dropping a big fancy name, but The first time I met John Green was in New Orleans.
Who's that?
Who's that? I think we've all heard of him. Was in New Orleans for ALA. He had just written Looking for Alaska. Was the only book he. Yeah, thank you. There's John right there on that T-shirt. So he had just won the Prince Award for Looking for Alaska, and this was like before John Green was John Green. He was just a Green writer. And we all went gambling together at the casino across from our hotel, and his wife was there, and we were just having a ball, but he still gives me the hardest time. I lost $20 and then I put down a little bit more money, and he's yelling to the casino, "Sarah Dessen is a compulsive gambler!" He likes to do that to me, he likes to embarrass me. At one point I was gesturing at another cocktail party and I hit this woman and he's like, "Sarah Dessen hits librarian!" It's really mean. So that was fun. Going out with a bunch of authors and gambling is hilarious. But we just always seem to have a good time when we're together. I think,
Are you a gambler?
I lost $14 in
Right,
St.
because it
Louis.
gets past $20 and I'm starting to think,
Yeah.
this could buy shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I lost $14 in St. Louis on this book tour, and that was it.
I lost $500.
See?
At ALA Las Vegas. Yeah, and then real quick. And then the next day my flight got delayed by 10 hours, and then you have all those slot machines, and I'm just gonna sit down for a second. And then
10 hours later.
no, and then I'm my flight still isn't taking off, this is so boring. And then I actually was just those ones with cards, Joker poker, and you just push the thing. And it's you get to a weird zombie.
Yeah.
Yes, you do, Jenny, you do.
Yeah, Jenny, what you've
You're
done
there
is,
for a reason.
yeah, this is your intervention.
I know.
Jenny is a compulsive gambler.
I want to gamble twice in my life.
Jenny, I want you to write down all the money, and then I want you to go online and look at all the shoes.
I know.
Okay, that is your punch. That is a really good one.
Now I'm just picturing an Ocean's 11, but with YA authors, on the high rollers. I would watch the crap out of that movie. I really would.
We would just keep getting kicked out of prom.
That would be the heist. You'd be like, we have to break into this prom.
That's right.
How are we going to do it?
I like it.
Well, looking at, the various books that you guys have written, this is kind of a cheesy question, but I like it. I'm going to ask it. What is, which character have you written that you would most want to be besties with? Out of all of them. Okay, we'll go first.
Yeah. D from Just One Day.
Okay, but why?
Yeah.
But why?
When I was writing D, and D was a real evolution, because if we're gonna D was a character that I imported from another book, and it was oh my god, I have just written the classic cliched, sassy black gay sidekick. It's I was horrified. I was because that's what he was in an earlier book. But then I started thinking about D, and I started thinking about this character who had grown up in sort of wealthy, predominantly white private schools among privilege, and how people would make these assumptions about him, and he's gay on top of that. And I had this character who started to tweak those assumptions. And he was the smartest character that I wrote, and by smart I meant if you could measure IQ of all these fake people that I created, D's would be off the charts. And he just seemed so kind of intelligent and complicated by the time I was done with him, but also such a loyal friend because so many people insisted on looking at him in a certain way that when he and Allison finally became friends, and of course I would see the real D too, or the many real D's. I was just I want this person to be my friend.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll say Kitty, who's the youngest. I love Kitty, and to all the boys I've loved before. She's a mercenary. She's she's a little spitfire, and she's a lot based on my younger sister, Susan. And she loves it when I do events and she's there, and people are Kitty's my favorite character, and she's just grinning.
Can she do the braid too?
Yeah, yes. I had her do my braids when she was 7 or 8, and I would just be do my hair.
We were joking beforehand about we should just be braiding each other's hair while we were talking on this panel. But we didn't.
I would probably say Layla from Say Anything these days, just because she's French fries, connoisseur, girl after my own heart. I've never been the person that can go to the thrift shop or the vintage store and find the one awesome thing that is there. I always am stuck looking through a bunch of bathrobes, finds the leather jacket.
Cigarette stick.
Yes, exactly. And again, I think I wrote the friend that I needed at that time. And so, but I love writing friends. I think you can often do stuff with your secondary characters that you can't do with your main characters. I think your main character has to be a little grounded, the narrator, so that the reader can really put themselves into it. So when I can write best friends characters, it's always a lot of fun because you can give them some crazy quirks and stuff because they're not having to carry the whole book. So I think that's another reason why I write about friendship so much, because it's just fun.
When you guys are putting together, these friendship structures in your books, so I was thinking about, okay, you have your main character, and what purpose does their best friend or their friend serve? Like you were mentioning the kind of cliche of like the sassy sidekick, but as we talked about how much our early friendships like really informed us and changed us and in some ways broke us, like how does that process go into creating these secondary characters for you guys?
It's interesting because when I start a book, I usually know my main character in my bones, and so it's the secondary characters that develop along the way. And so, yes, they're there kind of in support of the main character's journey, but they become deeply real to me. I think I Was Here is a little bit exceptional because the inspiration of the book really was the secondary character of Meg, who is dead when the book opens. And so she was so looming over the story that it informed how the book was. It helped inform, when I finished a draft, I was like, wow, Cody kind of thinks about Meg all the time and reflects back to her, like, that's a problem. And then I was like, no, wait, that's actually part of Cody's identity. She has so linked herself to this person who is no longer here that she is just now untethered without her. And that really helped me figure out who Cody was. So that was like an interesting way to look at it, but they really do become deeply real characters, even if you create them initially almost like as window dressing, but they never are. And it's like, oh, this is going to be the best friend who visits me in the hospital, and then you realize that they have like this deep, deep friendship.
Right.
I have a couple of friendships that I think maybe I wasn't as assertive in back in the day, when I was young. And I think sometimes, especially in Summer I Turned Pretty, writing the friendship between Belly and Taylor, I thought about, I wasn't thinking as I was writing it, but then after I read what I had written, I was like, whoa, I was kind of working through some of those old friendships, and I think it brings a certain kind of closure, just for you as an artist to be able to put, close the book on it in a way, and to work through those old emotions and to find a different kind of ending than the one that you had.
Right. I think that's so what writing YA for me is so much about, just in general, aside from the friendships, is like, I was really unhappy in high school, and I never thought I wanted to think about it again. Like, I can remember sitting at graduation, and everyone's like, this is so sad, and I was like, I hate everybody. Except for you probably.
Well, wait, I'll follow up on that.
Sarah definitely hates people.
But then you went to UNC in the same Chapel Hill, so was any part of you thinking, I want to get out of here?
Yes, and I did get out. I went to Greensboro, which is 45 minutes away from there. But then I dropped out, and I came back to Carolina, and I was like...
What was the time, how much time had passed in between those?
Not much. I mean, I ended up at Carolina, and I was like, gosh, this is like going to be like going to high school all over again, which it really wasn't, because the university was so totally different.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I feel bad saying that I hate everybody. But, the great
95%.
Yeah, the great irony of that statement is who spends all day thinking about high school now? Like the one person who said I'd never think about this again is, now making a living thinking about high school. So, I don't even know where I'm going with that. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think that I am still working through the issues, and I think you're always trying to kind of rewrite your own experience. And when you're writing about high school, you do have that snappy comeback that you actually thought of like 10 days later, but they come over and it's happening. Or you can sort of shake things or take things that happen and give them a happier ending than what happened for you. So it's like therapy, basically.
All right, I know we want to make some time for some audience questions. So if you guys have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll just call on some folks. This brave lady right here, and I'll repeat your question, so give me a chance to repeat it.
My question is, Sarah, I know that you mentioned that you left it, but do you think, it feels like it would, but does you think that it makes it easier in the sense that when they're going through high school and they're
So the question is, since two of you guys have kids, do you think that when those kids are teenagers,
We have PhDs in teenagerdom.
yeah, is it going to be easier to relate to what they're going through when they're young adults?
It might be easier to relate. I don't think that means it's going to be easier to raise. Because our kids do not give a flying. It holds no currency with, it holds no currency with them. And their experience is very individual. I do like to think that my 11-year-old daughter, who's like 11 going on 27, who has been like a challenging little person since she was 2, in my mind, I think when she gets older and more independent, we're just going to get on better and better because I'm good with teenagers. But I tell myself the way that I tell myself a lot of fantastical things. There's a little bit of magical thinking there. I really don't know.
Yeah. And my daughter's 7, so I've got a little while before we get to the
Less
teenage
to
years.
you.
I know. But I'm worried that, she's going to resent the fact that I think that I understand her. This kind of nodding in front. I think that she's going to be like, you don't really understand. Because I went through that whole thing with my mom where I was like, you don't get me. Like, I didn't want her to get me, So I think I'm expecting her to want to pull away, and I think that's okay. I don't, right now, she thinks I'm awesome, and I'm savoring that while it lasts. But what's interesting is, like, as far as the writer part of it, it's like they had career day at school, and they sent home a little thing. If you have an interesting career, I'd love to come talk about it to the classes. And I was like, oh, I have an interesting career. And she was like, no, Mom. She's like, they want like firefighters and policemen. Hello. I was like, look, some people actually are interested in what I do. Like, thank you.
Before they were talking about careers at preschool, and it was also the time that like kids that age are just complete liars. I think they were trying to talk about like true words and not true words. And so she came home one day, we were talking about what I did. I said, well, how you like to make up stories? And she said, yes. I said, well, Mommy makes up stories for a job. And she says, so you tell lies? And I'm like, yeah.
That was great, thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Well, how much in your stories are like based on your experience?
So the question is, how much in your books is based on your own experience?
Jen?
Often there are some themes, and also like To All the Boys is semi-autobiographical. I used to write love letters to boys, and I was trying to get over them and find closure. I guess it kind of makes sense. I'm a writer. I think you work out all that stuff on the page and you just let it out. So yeah, I think oftentimes stuff from my own life shows up, but it's pretty much mostly fiction.
Real quick, do you still have any of those notes?
Yes, I do. And I was joking about this the other night. I read a little snippet from one of them at the release party for To All the Boys, and I thought it was just, I had already planned what part I was going to read, and I thought it was just going to be like a funny thing. And everyone was loving it and laughing and stuff, and as I was reading, I felt like I was turning bright red. And it was weird because I hadn't thought about this person in so long, and then I'm reading this out loud, and the emotions felt so fresh in a weird way, instead of being embarrassing. It was just like, I'm reading your diary out loud to people.
Yes, I don't do that.
Yeah.
You redacted the notes though, right?
What?
You redacted the notes.
I think for me, it's whatever of my own life is in the books is usually I have to twist it. I've been using this great quote. Gayle and I did the Rochester Teen Festival. We did not crush a prom that particular time. But just recently, and I was talking a lot about how the book, before saying anything, I was trying to write about this sort of dark period in my own life where I was not a very good daughter and not a very good student and not handling things very well. And it was just too close. I couldn't do it. It was too close to me. So Gayle said, sometimes you do have to come at something sideways. So like with Saying Anything, it wasn't working to write from the point of view of a person that's going through a lot of problems and dealing with it not so well, but to write about it from the family's point of view sort of gave me the distance that I needed. So often if there is stuff from my own life, it's either I'm coming at it sideways, Gayle Forman quote, or I'm, working it in with the side story, like in Along for the Ride when Autumn's stepmom had the baby, my daughter was a baby, so I was able to write about the crying and how tired I was, and, you know, and how hard motherhood was, so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And, you know, so it's usually the secondary characters that are kind of going through what's going on. And that's been allowed me to write about stuff that was going on in my life while still reading about high school. And I think that that's key also, that I can sort of address, you know, in Lock and Key when Cora was trying to get pregnant, I was trying to get pregnant, you know, so there's always somebody that's usually echoing my own experience.
Cool. Other questions? Let's take one over here. Yes.
Do you, this is for anyone, do any of you have a favorite book that you've written?
The question is, do you guys have a favorite book that you've written?
No. You know, you have ones that you feel like very close to, and it's usually one when you're writing, and then I have ones that I wanted to murder, and now I look back, and I'm like, you weren't so bad after all. So I don't. I'm sort of attached to different ones for different reasons.
Yeah, I think picking a favorite, this is a question I've been asked before, and I think it's, I only have one child, so she gets to be the favorite, lucky her, right? Because my brother was the favorite in our family. And I feel no shame saying that, because he's true. But anyway, but I have two dogs, and I couldn't really say that I love one of them more than the other, because that's not nice.
Oh, when I had two cats, I totally had a favorite.
Yeah. Scotty. But I think that you definitely, it's like Gayle said, each one represents like a certain point in my life. There were definitely ones that were more fun to write than others. This lullaby was really fun to write. Along for the Ride was really fun to write. Just Listen was excruciating to write, but I'm really proud of it. So they all carry a different weight. They all represent, like I said, a certain point of where I was in my life. So to pick one over the other would be to like pick a certain year of my life, which is about sort of all of them together.
I was semi-joke that, you know, people always say that picking your favorite book is like picking your favorite child. Well, I think that firstborns are really special to parents as their oldest child. You know, they're usually a little bit of a favorite.
Yeah.
They're the first.
My brother's older.
Right? People that love that first one. And then I think the baby is always special because it's like new and cute.
Right.
So the oldest would be youngest.
Yeah. First in the lab. First in the most recent.
I don't want to break at this too, Jenny, but I think you make all your mistakes with your oldest child.
True. Other questions? Yes, right there.
Every book I ever read, it affects me in such an emotional level. Is there any book that you guys have read that hits you so hard that you feel like you're inside of the book?
So is there a book you guys have read that hit you really hard emotionally, that really connected with you?
Time Traveler's Wife really did. When I was reading that book, I think I pointed out because I think it's got one of those really spectacular endings. You know, they say that it's like really, it's like shocking yet inevitable. Like you knew it wasn't going to end in a pretty way. You knew from page one how it's going to end, and when it happens, it just feels like a punch in the gut, and it was so like surprising. So I think that to me is a feat, and it made me just. I finished reading and I immediately started reading it again, and you get like such a well of sadness. I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. My favorite book is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving, and I know I love it too. It's so good. And you know, John Irving is one of those writers where if you pick up certain of his books, they seem really whacked out because there's like bears and crazy people and stuff. But this book, I just felt like Owen as a character was just so. It's one of the few books that I have read over and over again at different points in my life, and I get something different out of it every time I read it. But whenever I get to the very end, and it sort of is this pleading, like, you know, oh Lord, bring him back. I will keep asking you. I get teary just thinking about it. Like, it's such an amazing, amazing book. So I would say, and that's why it's my favorite. But I respond emotionally to a lot of what I read. I think that's part of it. And I think that's why this audience is so amazing. And when I have people come through my signing line and they're just like, you know, I totally know that feeling of when you see something on the page and you're like, I thought I was the only person who felt that way. I thought I was the only one who ever went through that. And when I was in high school, reading saved me for that reason, because it was like, even if nobody around me seemed to understand what was going on, I could find something in a book that made sense and spoke to me. And that's the power of it.
You know, I think Because I have a penchant for killing people in books. I
Now there's mercenary.
often get asked, like, in sort of serious tones, like, what is it with young people, and why do they like these books that make them cry, and dark books, and is it healthy? And it's like, really, like, can we go back to the Greeks and talk about catharsis? And how, like, the young people are no different from the old people, and that there is an experience when you're reading. And it's not always around sadness and sorrow. When I think about a book that I had the most cathartic experience reading recently, it was We Need to Talk About Kevin. And it has just the most beautifully subtle, redemptive ending. And when I got there, it was just like everything that had gone on for that incredibly tense book erupted out of me. And it's so cleansing. It's an incredible feeling. And I love that in books. I look for that in books. So it's not like necessarily like the sad thing happened, the weepy tearjerker, but it's that thing. And this idea that like it's bizarre that people like that, I'm like, but we've been liking that since we've been telling stories because it does something cleansing. And when we do it communally, whether we're reading a book together, when people are seeing a play, there's something very powerful in that moment.
That's why I love K-dramas. Didn't you watch K-dramas? Yeah, it's like you just feel it's the catharsis. It's like all the emotions, like all the emotions just like explode out of you. You're just crying and laughing. And it's the best.
Is there a word for crying and laughing together? Crossing?
Mashed potatoes.
You guys are right. Figure it out. Other questions? Yes, all the way in the back in the flat shirt.
I was. Oh,
No, go for it.
I was wondering, like, people in your life, especially influential, like, when did you realize, like, you wanted to start the book person or an event?
Okay, I think I got it. So, what was there a person in your life like that really influenced you guys, especially when it comes to becoming a writer?
My parents, and they were like very loving and supportive, but that's not why. I spent a good deal of my youth bored shitless. And I had to escape into my
We
imagination.
made it this far into the panel, I would like to point out before Gayle
I know.
first. I'm proud of her.
I mean, I had to escape into my imagination to like entertain myself. And I started writing stories, and that's basically how it continued.
Yeah, well, I would have to say Lee Smith, who is the reason I'm published. I think not only, did she read my terrible first novel, which nobody would ever want to read, it's like a doorstop, and she read the whole thing and gave me notes on it, but she was a real working writer. And I think to see that, a lot of times when I go into schools, people say, oh, I've never met a real writer before. And I lived in a place where I was very fortunate where there were a lot of working writers, so writers were not just, dead people on the back of books, it was like real people. And I would go to Lee's house and I would see her writing, I would see her dealing with the publicity stuff and her working life, and it made it seem like it was something that I could actually do. It made it seem not quite so impossible, And she believed in me so much more than I believed in myself. And I think I really needed that at the time too. So I'm forever grateful. I promised her my firstborn, but I haven't reneged on that because I want to keep my child now.
Someone who was really, I think, influential in me becoming a writer, or actually self-identifying as a writer, was a teacher I had in the 4th grade. I was thinking about that. Sorry, inside joke. Okay. A teacher who was really mean and was sort of known as being like a little bit like of an abusive teacher. And when I got her name, I was like, I cried. I didn't want to be in her class. But there was one day when she was teaching long division. The board, and she called me up to do the problem, and I couldn't figure it out, and she grabbed me by the case and was like, why can't you figure this out? And was digging her nails in my skin. It was really humiliating, and I had tears in my eyes that hurt, and also because the kids were laughing.
Right.
So from that moment I felt like I was really dumb at math, even though I really wasn't dumb at math at that point. It was still kind of early on. I just felt very slow when it came to math, but she also, I found old notebooks of mine, of stories I'd written, and she was like, I'm going to see your name on a book one day. And she very much was like, you were a writer, and she would take my notebook and show it off to all the teachers in the lounge. And she told me I was a writer, and she also told me I was like dumb at math. Right? I believed it. Like I believe both of those things, and I think it's just a testament to show that like kids believe adults when you tell them you're something that they take it in. And so I took it in, and I was good at writing, and I also took it in, and I was like dumb at math.
And they're
so,
not mutually exclusive.
no, and I think it's exactly. But you know, it's just the power that like adults can have over you as a kid. I saw her years later at Burger King. And she came like at the mall, and she came up to me.
I know she was working at Burger King.
No, she actually got fired because she like hit another kid. I mean, like, yeah. So, but she came up to me years later, and I think I was in college. She was like Jenny Han, and I hadn't seen her since I was, you know.
I'm like picturing her as this like teeny old lady in like a cloak.
No, she was quite tall, with gray hair, and she just was like, I knew it. I knew you were gonna be doing good things, and I was like, thanks. I didn't have the heart to be like, did you
buy her like a Whopper meal or
something? The gargle of my nightmares. Like she was like a golem in my nightmares as a kid. But she believed about herself as this great educator, so I couldn't, you know, burst that bubble. But I did put a similar sounding last name in my first book for a teacher that was mean. So
Writing is the best revenge.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it really is.
So we have just a few more minutes lightning round. Yeah, I was actually, my last question is, when you guys were in high school, what was like the #1 thing written in your yearbook by your friends to you?
Oh yeah. Oh dear.
Or your favorite message, either way.
Oh, okay. This guy Matt, I actually posted on Twitter when I was at home looking at all the books, said, "You have the mouth of a sailor and the face of a princess."
That's really good.
Yeah, Matt Redmond. Yeah. Wait, Matt, I forgot his last name, Matt Reynolds.
Give credit where credit is due.
That's one T.
Oh, it would have been, I've lost my yearbook ages ago, but it would have been like some really great quote. The doors to perception are cleansed. Everything that appears tonight is truly is intimate. Which actually, even though I made that sound very cheesy, I find very still true.
You ran with an artsy crowd. And
We read Milan Kundera and wore that black hat from the Unbearable Nights.
so pretentious.
All high school, all senior year, I was obnoxious. And I had a British accent.
All right, that's terrible.
I lived in England.
We would not have been friends. Okay, we have no time, but Sarah doesn't. Go for it.
I would say that probably the #1 thing written in my yearbook was like, let's get the hell out of here.
And on that note, let's get the hell out of here.